Thank you everybody for being here and braving Lower Parel and Mumbai traffic on a Thursday evening. I really appreciate you guys being here. Today is extra special for us because this is the first in the Better Collective's Upswing series. We created Upswing just as an opportunity to bring investors, brand owners, and other industry experts together to really talk about emerging business opportunities. Before things happen, how can you hone in on a trend that's coming down the pike and what it takes actually to convert that trend into a real business. So without further ado, I'll just get started with the conversation. Today, we're essentially talking about whether India is sitting on a multi-million-dollar global luxury opportunity. So just want to set the stage really quickly. The global luxury market stands at $266 billion. Almost 50% of the sales of that comes from just 5 to 10 global companies. India has always been a part of this journey, but for example, the things we've done have been more as a supplier. So you have incredible embroidery that goes to couture houses in France and New York, or you have 90% of the world's diamonds being cut and polished in India, and then they make it to Tiffany's and Omega and Rolex, and the list is endless. Also for cosmetics, fragrances, essential oils that come from India are a huge component for those brands. And so it kind of sparked the thought in my head that why is it, and the Indian consumer luxury market is now growing. There's a lot of energy and excitement, a lot of investment happening. People are creating brands, or a lot of international brands are coming from abroad and trying to capture the Indian consumer. But when you think about an Indian global luxury brand, only 3 or 4 names come to mind. Maybe Taj, maybe Sabyasachi, we all love him, and Anita Dongre or Tanishq, right? So my question to all of you to start off this conversation is, why is it that we have so few Indian homegrown luxury brands? Nikhil, do you want to start?
So you named 3 luxury brands in India. You talked about Sabya.
Yeah.
Sabya, by the way, got sold at $100 million. That's it. $100 million is the value of the top 3 luxury brands in India, if that's what it is. Shows the subscale of opportunity which is there in the market today. And that's reality, and I'm saying it from an investor's perspective. Ironically, I'm also an investor in Shubhika, so we are stakeholders in RUS. So firstly, I think the definition needs to be twisted a bit. Is there a market for luxury in India? I think there's a crazy, crazy market for luxury in India. Indians in generic are very asset-centric users. So if you look at the spends that Indians do in destination weddings,
yeah,
in real estate,
yeah,
in diamonds, in jewelry, in cars, in watches, I think that is second to few maybe, but almost second to none. So there is enough amount of spends which are happening in what is asset-backed luxury, not too sure of product-backed luxury.
Right.
Not yet. We are great in services, so a Taj symbolizes a service standard which no other brand in the world offers, and that's the reality. So much so for airlines also. I think Indian airlines or Asian airlines are a lot more service-oriented than any European or US carrier ever will be in their life. So I think there's clearly, I think the challenge is that, you look at any developed market, right? We keep talking about this threshold of per capita income and then growth and so on. But the fact is that every developed market in the world first got their asset backing in place before the luxury product or usage of that category started to evolve. So I think India is still very early in that journey, relatively early in the journey. Like in everything else that you look at, life cycles really turn short. So I'm presuming and assuming that, Indian luxury intake, and we do have 2 players who do that, will possibly be not more than 10 years away now, to what possibly could have been a lot longer. And I just think one more point maybe right now is that, luxury brands don't happen overnight.
Right.
These are aspirational. These are more than aspirational. It's actually aspirational is easier. Luxury is slightly more difficult. If you look at any luxury brand in the world, they've been nurtured pretty much for decades and decades and centuries, maybe in some cases. In India, if you look at businesses which have been there for decades, these are all legacy businesses. If you look at any business house in India, right from the Reliances to Tatas and Birlas of the world, maybe the next generation is a lot more keen on luxury, not too sure about that, but let's park that. But most of the legacied business houses in India, they've been brought up on the notion of Indian consumers, which is mid-mass. At best, mass premium or mid-premium. They've not been brought up on the premium end of the customers, yeah? Because that's not where the consumer lied. Most of the next generation of entrepreneurs that you look at in India today have a very short, and I'm saying this almost uniformly, have a very short window of opportunity which they are trying to capture. They're not there, and which is nothing wrong about it. They're not there for making the next big thing for the next 50 years. None of them are there. So, you know, you can't have a brand which requires disproportionate capital and disproportionate resources from founders to be attached to the brand when both of them are inadequate in the form they are.
Got it. Almona, do you agree with Nikhil? Do you think that he rightly mentioned about aspiration being a really important part of luxury, right? And traditionally, there's been a notion that true luxury emerges from the West, be it the US or Europe. Is it that perhaps we as Indians don't have enough confidence in ourselves to be able to build a global luxury brand? Or do you think the consumer mindset abroad, even though they are very hungry for the story of India, what do you think is actually preventing people from building these brands?
Let me take a crack at it. So anyway, thank you for having me here, Radhika. I think it's a very, very interesting topic, and it may not be conclusive in some 50 minutes that you had planned. I'm going to take a step back, actually, to what Nikhil said, and completely agree with what he said. I think we do need to realize that those who had the vision and the capital, and there are those, so before you name a Sabyasachi, which has just happened, there was the Shah Mahuja, if anyone remembers that label, or Burlington's, Andre Kapoor, and Shahnaz Hussain. I mean, it may not be a brand that today has kept up with, what they intended to do. Went international. They went to South Africa when South Africa opened. So they went international, made success of their brands. But everyone didn't have the capital. We were a global economy in those decades. So there was no vision. I mean, today it comes so easy to everyone young who has an idea. It's so easy to find the right people to kind of bring that idea together. So the difficult times, and people needed to have a vision. So today, if you don't have an idea better than the 20 other people who are thinking the same idea, you're not going to make it. I mean, I hate to be a pessimist, and I'm not one. I actually firmly believe that we're just at the, finally, after 15 years of watching luxury brands enter the country, being successful, and having stayed through this, and sort of embedded themselves and becoming household names, and many left, many changed hands in the decade and a half, they've at least sort of firmed their footing in India. So luxury is here to stay, and in fact now we're seeing that with post-pandemic, in fact, people are buying, and I'm in this business now, and I watch that, and I'm blown away every single day when I see a tiny little pin code. We need to figure out which state is this from, a 7 lakh rupee watch being bought in a small pin code, unknown pin code in West Bengal, or across the country, across South. Sometimes we say, is it Punjab, or is it just South India? But it's across the country. We're seeing people shop for all these categories. And yes, we're an asset-sensitive and, sort of investment-forward mindset we have. But today, the young Gen Z, the millennials, they are shopping for today. They're living for today. And post-pandemic, hell, everyone's living for today, right? Nobody's thinking about later.
I'll actually just bring in the brand owner on the panel here to give us a ringside view of this of this question because I'm a big fan of Russ myself. I use the oils. Quite honestly, I'm really telling you this not because you're here. And I was asking Shubhika earlier when we were discussing this panel that, you know, your serums, your elixirs, these are so high quality and so effective. They're comparable from a product point of view to, say, a La Mer cream or a La Prairie cream, right? Now, her serums sell for about $3,500, right?
Hello.
And a La Mer sells for $300. So when you were trying to create this brand, right, when you actually set about to build Russ Luxury Oils, you clearly had your product figured out. You clearly had maybe not all the capital that you needed, but you were getting there, right? Why did you not bypass the Indian market and try to go global? Because that consumer is already ready for an Indian luxury brand.
Thank you so much, Radhika, for having me here with Nikhil and Almona ji, and I'm just, you know, a young person learning on the way, and I'm very humbled to be here. And from a brand owner's perspective, firstly, when we launched Russ, that time, to be very honest with you, we did not have the kind of strategy that we have now. We have evolved over time. So that time, we did not have the bandwidth. Honestly, apart from capital, it also requires some sort of strategy and know how to do it. So essentially, when we launched in 2017, I had graduated in 2015, and I kind of I had the passion for product. I have always, I'm from a business family, so I've seen that how, you know, my father, he started his educational institutes without any background on starting an education institute, or like we had otherwise into solvent extraction mills and rice mills. So I knew that I wanted to do something about it, and when I saw that there is so much sort of adulteration in this, that is when I wanted to start a brand from India. Now for the price point, even the price point of 3,000 when we were starting, people were like, who will buy such an expensive oil and everything so is available for $100 or, you know, like $300. Nobody would really like, even 3,000 was a big amount, because in India, otherwise skincare, if you look at the mainstream brands, like which everybody uses, say a Himalaya, Nivea and everything, they're all like 150, 200 kind of bucks. So that was also a huge step up, almost a 10x increase in pricing from what people are used to. So we had to do it. We did not have an option, because when we were kind of extremely focused on, say, the product's craftsmanship, we realized that, you know, everything becomes slowly little and little more and more expensive as we go all natural and everything. So that's why we chose that path.
So then wouldn't it have been easier, maybe, to sell at that price point to a consumer base in the US, Europe, Japan, Korea, China, where they're used to buying skincare creams for that amount, right?
Yeah.
Is that something you considered when you built the brand? Because in India,
Yeah.
the consumer is only now going forward in luxury,
Absolutely.
right? And it'll probably be another 10 years before we get used to buying a cream for $300, right?
Yes, so we did look at all these brands when we would travel internationally and everything, La Mer, La Prairie and all of these brands. But you know, the whole experience aspect is very important when you have to price a product at $300. So people might not be willing to buy it online. So most people would want to have an in-store experience when they can see, you know, breathe and kind of actually kind of experience the entire product. And you know why we did it, like the reason we also did it was because, you know, India is a land of so many resources, so many of these ingredients like essential oils, because that was one of the main things that made us start this brand, which is called Russ, which means essence and happiness. So you know, we started it because there's so many brands which are, Indians are using imported products, and people feel that imported means acha hota. Good. So we wanted to change that perception, and we feel why we can do it is because culturally also, like all these brands that you mentioned, like a Taj or an Oberoi or a Sabyasachi, so culturally India has been something in which hospitality is very important, like Atithi Devo Bhava. So that's why something that we do in which we culturally more evolved than the other countries, it has to also be considered more luxury. So a Sabyasachi, because it's into Indian wear, So Indian wear is something which is very ethnic to us. So even that, and I feel like us being in Ayurveda and wellness is also a concept which is now people are associating India with wellness.
Yeah, thanks to turmeric lattes
Yes.
and yoga and
Exactly.
I don't know
Can I
what
just,
else.
can I just add one thing?
Yes, please.
So, you talked about luxury being defined as saying that you're selling something at $50 and technically you can sell that at $500 somewhere.
Right.
That's not luxury at all. Means frankly, the price per square inch of a painting is the same for me, who has no clue of painting, to MF Hussain, late MF Hussain, if he did, right? The price is the same. It's just the price at which he sells is very different because there is something attached to MF.
Right.
So
right.
I think that brand is what it is.
That brand
right?
is what it is,
So
yes.
if Radhika, if Shubhika tried to sell Ras into US market, I'm not too sure whether she would have me as an investor for sure.
I was just thinking of asking Nikhil, do you think we should increase the prices? Nikhil would be like, bye, Shubhika.
So, but Almona, you were telling me about this very recently that, while you're saying this, Nikhil, Almona and I were talking about the fact that, Estee Lauder recently has joined forces with Nykaa, and they're creating an incubator for Indian beauty brands, right? Because they see the potential so much, having already invested in Forest Essentials. Today, 30% of Forest Essentials e-commerce sales are happening in the UK. So now they're going to launch 12 stores in the UK, right? And I completely understand they've built the brand, they've made the mistake. But on the other hand, there are other brands like Anjali Mehta. You can speak to those.
No, so basically, I think we need to get a couple of things straight. I don't think that you can skyrocket there without testing it out. Either you go into a capsule collection, a pop-up, a collaboration, test. I mean, you've got to test it out. Anita Lal of Earth has gone and launched Leela Noor, a bottle of fragrance for $450 at Bergdorf this spring, this summer.
Right.
And it's not available in India. But
That's
I think
right.
she's coming from a backing of a successful home brand, a beauty brand that her daughter also launched and so on. So you can afford to do that. You can't, I wouldn't suggest that after having worked very closely with international brands and seeing what they do, as Nikhil alluded, the kind of, first you can't build a brand, a luxury brand overnight.
Right.
And you cannot build it without all the storytelling and the right kind of testing that you need to do, and you've got to build that perception. And it's all about emotion, but you've got to do it, it happens over time. So it cannot be built overnight, and you can't go just because. India is cool abroad. It is cool. It is the right time to explore. But do it as pop-ups, do it as collabs. Collabs are cool now.
Right.
And it's an opportunity for any brand to, we hear about it with all the big mega brands doing collabs with smaller brands. Sabyasachi with H&M, for instance,
Right.
which was literally wiped out in a
Sold
few
out, yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of collabs that one should try if one wants to test a market. We don't have to be traditional. There's no life cycle of 10 years to examine a brand life cycle anymore. Everything's faster, shorter, all of that. But that's what
Also, Almona, I think you mentioned that you've seen so many luxury brands come to India, and you alluded to the notion of experience, right? I think more than for a luxury brand to exist and be desirable, it's not just the product design that needs to be top-notch, but the aesthetics of the brand end-to-end need to be fantastic, right? Your in-store experience, your customer experience, online, offline, at every stage. So do you think that that's another issue that prevents us from going global? Because in India, we're a little bit jigadu, right? Like we don't like to be by the book. We don't follow rules. We're quite casual about customer service.
I work with Italian brands a lot, and they have the same jugadu mindset. But somehow, I mean, when you talk to them, they're ready to understand and find solutions, but they don't reapply it to the way they build their brands. So absolutely, I will say that, so Tata CLIQ Luxury has about 600 to 700 brands online. And 50% of those are global and 50% are Indian brands across categories: fashion, beauty, home, accessories, and so on. And the scale of business, so 80% of my business comes from global and 20% comes from the Indian brands. Now you'll ask me why. Yeah. I mean, we all relate. Indian brands, by the way, immediately, you know, we look at it, it's a labor of love, the indie luxe version of Tata CLIQ Luxury. For anyone who has the app and browses, it's a labor of love. The way we handpick the brands, Russ is on the platform. They're beautiful brands, and you fall in love because our creative teams, our site merchandisers, all of them tell the story. We all believe that we're in between the customer and the brand. So our job is to just create a beautiful window for the brand. And we really enjoy building the Indian brand stories, even more than the global brands, to tell you honestly, because you get far more creativity. Otherwise, when Michael calls, they'll tell you exactly what you can do and what you can't do. Right. And they have it pat because they've been doing it professionally across the world, and which we don't have. But the beauty is you can create those beautiful stores. But then comes the back end, and then comes the experience that you're talking about. And there's so many, if you can't live up to that story that you've told, then you've lost your customer for sure. Because we have a 60% repeat audience, but once you've lost your customer, to bring that customer back is a very, very difficult task. So the Indian customer, I mean, just the fact that if you get it wrong, if you've called, you've not got the right product, or the product didn't live up to the expectation, and that happens.
Absolutely.
Often.
So, Nikhil, I want to share with you the story of, there's a new skincare brand that's emerged in the US, founded by an NRI. It's called Ranavat. And what she's doing is she's taken the philosophy of Ayurveda and given it a very modern spin. The packaging is very premium. And she, again, retails at places like Bergdorf, Neiman Marcus, and so forth. So you'll see content and videos like, this is how my grandmother used to oil my hair with coconut oil, and now it's being sold to the Americans as this very exotic thing, you know. Do you think that it is a matter of the right storytelling that we're not being able to accomplish? Like, what would you say to a thing like that? She's very successful. So I'm just curious to know, do you think that that is not the right way to do it?
So, you know, there are possibly around 100, 120 people out here, 100 people. I'm not too sure how many people have heard of the brand that she just talked about. I haven't. So, for all the luxury.
Wait, how many of you all have heard of Ranavat? Yeah, okay. All the women have, it seems like. There's a lot more men.
5 out of 120, good ratio. Okay. But
yeah.
So,
By the way, he's also wearing the promoter hat.
I'll tell you why. But yeah, so you know, my sense is that you know, and I'm presuming our drive is more towards, can India emerge as a luxury brand destination, right? Both as a consumer as also as a producer of luxury brands, right? I think there's a way to do it. I think the channel of building that will be very different to what you've seen globally. Go with the underlying assumption that Indian entrepreneurs don't have the, I wouldn't say passion, but they don't have the longevity to create a luxury brand. Let's go with that as an underlying theme. How do you still create one? I think the fact is that Indians globally spend a lot of money. They spend all the money. Indians are getting pretty much like Americans. We are saving less, possibly spending more. We are okay with debt. My daughter will buy luxury products, which I would never buy in my life. I'm worth all of 5,000 bucks. I'm sure she's worth 50,000 bucks. Yeah, that's where she is, possibly more. So, you know, that's the change, right? Now, but the fact is that if consumers are in India, there is a distribution pipe which is reaching. Consumers are shopping abroad. There is a aspiration to buy, right, or an intent to buy. How do you bridge that gap? That will create luxury out here, right? So you have to do what, and luxury, while you did say that luxury does not sell online, by the way. what do you do? In India, you've got consumers, but they're used to maybe buying it somewhere else, or they're not the intent is not there, right? Because you don't trust the Indian brands, which is fine. That's how we've. My sense is that if you've got demand out here, you need to create supply. And the supply is by creating distribution channels. So if, let's say, luxury watches is a very good example. Now, I'm presuming, and I've been an investor in Ethos, which is a luxury watch retail chain. They have around 60, 70 shops across India, across all airports and everything. They sell the Cartiers, Omegas, Rados, and so they sell all the luxury watches in India. The idea is that you create trust out here. You create price parity to what luxury brands are globally. And service in India is far, far superlative than anywhere else in the world. So to that extent, then you create trust, and then you start to have consumers intaking. Earlier, consumers would shop, let's say, anywhere from 10 lakh upward watches abroad. Today, I don't think you need to do that at all. Means if you want to buy your 5 to 50 lakh rupee watch, you're okay to buy it in India. It's not such a big deterrent incrementally. And obviously, it's a delta change. You can't change completely. So that's one way of doing it. Second, to me, is the fact that you create aspiration which are higher. So what Shubhika does, Russ does a beautiful job of, is that while you said it's still 10% of what global brands are, 10% is still 100% or few 100% of India. If she's created a premium aspiration of a brand, I think that's a beautiful aspiration to create. It's like what more known brands like a Porsche or a BM or a Merc would do, right? You create those brands and then start to say, okay, where is the heart of the market? And say, okay, can I introduce a 30, 40 lakh rupee car? A Maruti can never sell a 20 lakh rupee car, never. A BM selling a 30 lakh rupee car is a very, very plausible thing. That does not change the context of luxury. It creates aspiration, the mid-tier, to go to the 2 crore car or 1 crore car. You need to have a step layer. In India, you don't have a step layer. You have this 100 rupee creams, and then you have Shubhika at 3,000 bucks. Where is the ladder?
No, I wanted to just go back to
to what you said, Nikhil.
No, I want to actually, I'm going back to your question of Ranavat. Today we're launching brands, or people are launching brands in a social commerce era. And that's the big difference. It depends who you're targeting. If this younger generation is willing to spend all their money that they make, or that they have them parents' credit cards and so on, and they are living that life, they are TikTok, they're in TikTok, and they want to kind of emulate everything that they see. You have to make your brands relatable, and therefore your story for your brands have to be very relatable. Sometimes the myth to say when you're a luxury brand, you have to be uptight and very sort of distant and almost sort of sound rarefied. You're almost sounding old. And the younger generation is not interested in that kind of language, right? They want to. You've got to relate and cut out all that. So make it relatable, be honest, be transparent, have flaws. Look the way you look. And so that's actually a very important part of how Kulfi, which is another beauty brand that's done so well. And again, an Asian working at Estee Lauder for whatever number of years, decided, okay, I want to, I don't find my color tones in the foundations at Estee Lauder or Lancome, so I'm going to launch my own, and for the South Asian community, as has, so many other stories like that. The Kris Jenner and all of them have, I'm sure, launched many such beauty brands. Masaba, another great example. So I think we have to be relatable storytelling. You got to be ready to be on social, to kind of engage with your customer and tell your story. Very, that's very, very important. Coming back to bridge and, you have to believe that luxury there is tier 2, tier 3 India is ready. We shouldn't keep thinking of our drawing rooms and Bombay, Delhi, Gurgaon, Bangalore, being generous to add 1 or 2 more cities. I'm talking about India is so ready, I'm sure you know that, in terms of spending money. And it's the younger generation. They wish list, they shop regularly, there's guilt-free shopping, it's not only occasion-based shopping, it's shopping all the time. It's every day.
And you disagree with Nikhil when he says you can't really sell luxury online because with the metaverse and things like that, with the metaverse and Web 3.0 coming out, the estimates are that it's actually going to be 30% of luxury sales moving forward are going to come online.
It is true, correct. We've seen all the stats. We all read those reports. I don't want to throw numbers. But what I do want to say is that those shifts are happening. Rolex will not sell online. They do sell online on Houdinki, for instance. And they will be pre-owned. But India, let's be very clear. Watches are being sold. Come Christmas, just hop on to Tata Luxury and you might see some Richemont brands that are going to be brands that people will want to buy. So there's a shift happening. It's all happening at Ethos. We work very, very closely with, for instance. So they have that whole offline-online play. And I'm so happy to hear you say price parity. That's our biggest pain point. Because, luxury brands cannot discount. We don't want, nobody wants to, I'm sure us doesn't want to put a percent discount close to their brand. But the Indian customer wants a deal. If you can say a pair of jeans is not 10,000, it's 8,000, or it's actually, so whatever, as long as they see value in it, they're going to buy it.
No, I agree with what Nikhil said about building a brand, because see, building a brand is not even a 5-year job. It takes like 10 years, 20 years to build a brand which people can recognize across the room, where you're sitting at. So building a brand is not possible, a luxury brand is not possible by just going the online way. If you've built a brand in the more difficult way, like how other luxury brands have built with stores and everything, then online becomes easier. But then if you're going online to offline, you will be needing a lot of capital. And online, people are buying, but they're buying online from places that they trust, like say a Tata CLIQ Luxury or, other trustable sites. So 20%, according to statistics which you believe in, 20% of customers are still shopping for luxury goods online. So 20%, and it's growing faster. So that is the hope that we have as a brand that's currently selling more online, and offline also we are, kind of expanding our footprint to do that. And to be able to make that, the passion for the product has to be more than the passion for profits in the short run,
And I just want to,
That is what VCs don't like.
It's absolutely true. You need to have touch and feel. And you can go reverse. You can go from online to offline or do together. But the scale or the rate at which people want to grow and the sort of market growth is across the country. And you can't do what China did with luxury brands. I mean, we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the landscape. And we don't want to go into that topic today, I'm sure. So that is a barrier. And therefore, online plays a role. But absolutely nothing like an offline lab or a studio, if you can.
Any business which is not a frequency business, any purchase which is not a frequency purchase, I don't know why any person will want to shop online. I don't know what the definition of luxury is out here. I would want to not believe that a luxury product will be sold online. You can create lead generation online. Ethos will create lead generation online. They will not sell a product which, if I'm buying a Rolex, which is luxury, if I'm buying a Rolex at 20 lakh, why will I buy online? It means I've got to be out of my mind to do it. So I'm not too sure whether that online thing, then we have to redefine luxury, possibly, to that extent. If we do that, then surely there's a 20% subset or 25% which is doing it online. That will keep growing. But if you're saying about, let's say the top 5 brands in the world, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Hermes, what else? You know better.
So many.
Well,
Tiffany,
in India,
Tiffany.
Chanel, Tiffany. In India, the top 5 brands, Taj, TBZ, Joy Lucas. These are all jewelry retailers. Now that is luxury, that's asset purchase. So there is frankly no, you're not going to buy a Hermes bag online. So I'm not too sure whether that market really exists. And whether it might take another 10 years, but you need to have the ability to walk through 10 years. Else, the first guy through a door also gets shot. So you don't want to be the first guy trying to create that market in India. because it will be a very, very long haul play to be.
Radhika, in this, like, I think what you're saying is correct for India, but like, internationally, like I have my cousin in Hong Kong, he's seen that jewelry, people are buying, these Chinese people, they're buying jewelry worth crores of rupees online. And he's also shocked. So internationally, I think consumers are buying luxury online. Maybe in India, people definitely don't, like how you've mentioned, and you kind of would be right in that. But if we're planning to build a global brand, then there is still hope.
Right. I also wanted to talk about what is luxury, right? You've brought up this point. And I think there's a major generational shift happening. We now live in a digital world. People's career paths have become non-traditional. And at the same time, while the world's become so busy and stressful, the definition of luxury perhaps is now also shifting away from just pure product to things that, root people back to tradition or nostalgia, right? And I think in that sense, so the biggest luxury nowadays is time, right, as an example. And so as people, while the iPhone continues to sell, so do digital detoxes and huge luxury
Spas that only promise a phone-free experience, right? So do you think that given India's cultural heritage and our intuitive understanding of these things, perhaps that's a market that we can package up and capture?
No, I clearly think, I say, as Maslow's theory was, today's luxury will be tomorrow's necessity. I think that clearly will happen. So I think there are different ways to package the product. So if you're talking about India moving from asset back to product back, you'll need to define those product lines and say, okay, we'll be good in 5-6 categories, we'll not be good in 50.
What do you think those categories could be for India?
I don't know. So if you look at luxury image from France and Italy, tell me one luxury brand from US, even US. Tesla, means that's asset. I'm not too sure. So if you look at even regionalization, which is there globally, forget about India developing or wherever you want to slot India. Even in developed market, it's slotted between France and Italy.
And Nikhil, don't you think that one of the reasons that's the case is because Europe has a very long history compared to the US. So the US can't really sell a story based on cultural traditions and craftsmanship because the country didn't exist for very long. And India is very similar to Europe, right? We have an enormous history, so much cultural diversity. So we could potentially actually be like France or Italy and have a talk about our crafts and talk about our heritage and package that up, right?
But we do have the crafts and we do tell our stories. Unfortunately, we tell them for some other brands. There are enough Frenchmen living in Pondicherry or in Chennai, sitting with weavers. They've lived here for 18, 20 years, building designs for Hermes and so on. So that's happening. We just didn't have the resources. We just didn't have the resources. We were buying the necklaces. Cartier's necklaces were bought by the Maharajas of India. So we have the eye, we've got the craftsmanship, we've got it all. We were buying the jewelry. So, but we, unfortunately, we've taken a little bit of a longer detour and suddenly got taken up, and I sometimes feel we've gone backwards. We've really gone backwards and we're back into this race and we're now enamored by the global brands because of various things that have happened, including the fact that we speak in English and whatever it is on the way. And we're enamored by it. Why do we all forget? Let's take an example of, we all send our children to universities outside India, and some stay back, some come back. We have art, our big artists today are living legends, forget the MF Hussain. Our living legends are doing museum work, they're doing the big museum pieces for museums in Germany and in the UK, and they're not doing it here because our Indian customer can't buy Atul Dodia or Jitesh Kalat beyond whatever they've bought and beyond whatever those price points were. So I'm sorry, we also, So luxury, I mean, firstly, a definition of luxury, as you rightly said, is time, but it means different things to different people. And I respect Nikhil when he says you cannot buy. I mean, my husband will never buy online, and I'll say, why do you need to go to a Chroma to see the same TV that you can quickly buy? You know exactly what you've done your research. But so there is that, but there are some towns, they've got the money and they find this trust factor. But and the definition varies.
Yeah,
So
I'm actually. I just sorry to interrupt you, but I think what I'm trying to get at is that India as a country is so full of culture, diversity, so many different arts, crafts, so much natural resource, right? Be it spices, be it tea. I mean, Nikhil, you and I were talking about this, right? So much tea is grown in India, and yet we don't have a single luxury tea brand for the world. I'm not saying the Indian consumer. The Indian consumer wants chai. But there are lots of other consumers around the world who drink tea regularly and would pay top dollar for a luxury tea brand. Why is it that India's not created a luxury tea brand? It's so simple.
Has Vadam Teas. That's also a portfolio company of Nikhil and Six Sense. It's a luxury tea brand from India.
Vadam, there are many small brands, but yeah, go ahead, Nikhil.
Sorry, I just want to make one point. Maybe the way to actualize this, right? And that's very important because there has to be something tangible coming out from this. Is frankly, are we strangulating the market well enough?
Right.
Global market, right? If that's the market that you're looking at. So if let's say India is very well established in hospitality, Taj and Oberoi do a fantastic job everywhere in the world. Can we do similarly in a lot of other categories? So let's say a Vadam tea becoming a global tea brand from in US and Europe and so on. And it's quite ironic because there are only 7 countries in the world which make tea. There are 170 countries in the world which drink tea. And there's not a single Indian brand. There's not a single brand from all the 7 producing countries. There's Dilmar, which is Sri Lankan. That's about it. There's no global tea brand in the world, which is weird. There's English tea, which I don't know, it's manufactured in India. Right. So, I think if we can strangulate the market and say, okay, we've cracked hospitality, we're cracking something like Vadam, a tea beverage play, we're cracking maybe something in beauty. Who knows? Rust could become one. We do something in platform plays. So Nykaa, technically, why should Nykaa be an India-centric platform? It can be a global platform, a Tata CLIQ for that matter. I think if we strangulate the market, get customers or consumers to feel that India is no longer the snake charmer or whatever you call it.
Yes, exactly.
You move off from that. Right. And I think if ever in India there was a chance to crack it, I think this is the best time to do it.
Right, so the time
Indian
is right.
salience is extremely high. There was just some report, I think a couple of days back, I saw it on WhatsApp. There are 80 CEOs from India. Rather, there are 40 or 50% of CEOs globally of the top 100 companies are Indians. Pakistanis are 3%, not relevant at all anyway, so let's depart that. but that's a fact, right? So it shows the salience of Indians everywhere. It starts from people to product to...
I think the food business, restaurants, food business.
Everything.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many fantastic...
Means, I'll just give sorry, I'm hogging too much of time, please shut me out.
Please carry on.
We've invested in a company called ADF. I'm pitching. It's a ready-to-eat Indian food, ethnic food selling into US and European market again. We've invested because we think ethnic India no longer exists. It's actually mainstream. So Indian food is becoming mainstream, and that will create a different cult of a market. Yeah, it is ethnic food so far, but I think it will become mainstream. And we think like that, and hopefully that will be the way it will shape up. So I think there's a greater opportunity for Indian brands to actually, creep in. Because global brands just can't. There's just no chance of them going beyond what they already do. There's just too much of structures there.
I love how he's had a U-turn from the start of this conversation to this. I love that.
I think, Radhika, the shift is it's not only then luxury brands. It's he's kind of looked at all the categories and said India is shining finally. We had the Economist time covers in 2005, 2008. Too bad we didn't kill it then. The tiger and rising tiger, etc. But now it seems like we don't need those covers actually anymore. We're there.
Our time has arrived. And so if ever we were to enter the luxury market, if ever we were to tell the story of India in a very luxe, beautifully told, aesthetic way, and if ever there was a time for us to take all of these inputs, it sounds like now is the time, right? Because India is having its moment. I just want to have one last question, and then I'll open this up to the audience for questions. When we talk about really large business houses, we spoke about capital, longevity, right? Your staying power to be able to build a luxury brand, as well as a vision, right? A mindset. Today, for example, Reliance brands, right? There's obviously endless amounts of capital, longevity, vision, whatever you want to call it. It's all there, right? And yet what they're doing is bringing a lot of luxury brands to India. Why is it that I'm quite certain that Reliance can create a luxury brand from scratch and take it to the world? Why is that not happening?
How do you know it's not?
It takes time.
No, it will. Why will Reliance create it? Okay, anyway. But, Reliance is also...
Oh, there's something in the works. Great. So then...
No, but Reliance is also buying luxury brands or getting the rights to buy them in India. They're not building up.
No, absolutely. They're focusing on a distribution and a licensing model. But I'm saying...
And it's also led by the next gen.
Right.
So you'll have to see how sticky and
right.
how it really goes through as you
right.
move forward. So let's not, just because of size, it does not mean it's successful. So let's hold on to that. This is not getting recorded.
Shubhika, do you have a thought on this? Let's just assume you were starting your journey all over again, and you had the backing of Reliance brands. Okay, all of the capital, the vision, the longevity. Okay, let's assume that. Would you then have taken the step to say, hey, I'm going to create this amazing brand, but I'm going to create it for a global audience. I'm going to create it for somebody sitting in Japan and China and Italy and France and India, right? The Indian consumer also matters. I'm not trying to suggest that we skip the Indian consumer. But do you think you would have done it differently if you had those three things?
I mean, we still have those three things with 6 cents, and we are still, we don't need. No, absolutely. They really understand what we're doing, and we're still building this. It's maybe next year when we sit here sometime, you would have a different perspective because we've just launched globally one month ago, and it does take time to build it because for a global brand, the supply chain has to be good. You have to understand the consumer's mindset there, what creatives work here, they don't work there. You have to really build that influencer outreach there. You have to create that aspiration through, say, if you're doing it in the online thing. I think where Nikhil and we don't agree is in the definition of luxury. So Nikhil would say that Vadam tea is also not luxury. I would say they are, but he would say it's not. So it's in that definition. But if you say some product which is above the average price that is selling and is luxury, it has that aspiration value as luxury, so then we are also creating that brand in an online thing, and then slowly we will move to stores and the offline space as well. And then we'll raise more capital for that. But this is a capital intensive game, and when you reach there, there's a lot of profits at the end of the tunnel. So we are doing it.
Yeah, so you're well on your way.
We would choose them over, the other brands that you mentioned, companies, any day.
Absolutely. I think if I had to kind of summarize the insights, Almona, your thought is that people are doing it. People are capturing the India story and telling it abroad, possibly with bridge to luxury brands to begin with, testing the market, and then they'll probably go into real luxury thereafter. Nikhil, you're saying it's a long-term game and capital intensive and just needs vision, right?
I'm saying there's a different way to strangulate the same market.
Sure.
So obviously you're not going to get more time than 10 years.
Yeah.
And no entrepreneur will get more than 10 years rather, let me say this.
Right.
So if you know the paucity of time, which is not going to change. So that's not a variable, it's a fixed.
Right.
Yeah. Then I'm saying there's a different way to address the same market and exploit the same market.
Got it. Yeah. And Shubhika, you're saying that, look, while there may be only a handful of brands right now that can be categorized as global luxury brands, it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time. I think on that note, I would like to kind of open up the floor to the audience if anybody has any questions. Yeah, go ahead.
While we were doing this, we've also gotten in touch with a lot of international consultants for spas and all of that. And what I've seen is that when you tell the same story to an international, say a spa consultant, they get so much more excited about the entire authenticity, about the farm to face, than say an Indian brand. They would be like, "TK, madam, samples bhejo." Over there, they would actually get excited about it, you know, and that is something which gives us hope that as an Indian brand, you actually may have more scope of growth, you know, globally as well. It's about how you do it.
Sure, that's a really great point as well.